Hello everyone, it's been a while. I hope you are all doing well and having a great start to 2021. Today we will talk about the 80-20 rule, which is also known as the Pareto Principle. The Pareto Principle states that for many outcomes, roughly 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes, which are called the fatal few. It's also known as the law of the fatal few, or the principle of factor sparsity. In this video, I will go over the 80-20 rule in detail, and perhaps suggest an even more relaxed way to live, which is to go with the 50 and 10 rule, where you put in 10% of the effort to achieve potentially 50% of the outcomes in life if you combine financial and other outcomes. You probably will not make too much money if you put in only 10% of your maximum effort, but you gain other benefits and you still live a decent life. According to Wikipedia, in computer science, the 80-20 rule can be applied to optimization efforts. For example, Microsoft noted that by fixing the top 20% of the most reported bugs, 80% of the related errors and crashes in a given system would be eliminated. Lowell Arthur expressed that 20% of the code has 80% of the errors. Find them and fix them. It was also discovered that in general, 80% of a certain piece of software can be written in 20% of the total allocated time. Now conversely, the hardest 20% of the code takes 80% of the time. It has been argued that the Pareto Principle applies to sport, where leading players often take the majority of the wins. In baseball, 15% of all the players last year produced 85% of the total wins, with the other 85% of the players creating 15% of the wins. The Pareto Principle holds up pretty soundly when it is applied to baseball. It has been suggested, but not tested, that the principle applies to training, with 20% of exercises and habits having 80% of the impact, suggesting that trainees should reduce the variety of training exercises to focus on this effective set. Last year, and by that I mean a few weeks ago, I talked about saving and investing $100 a week to get you $1 million within 50 years if you achieve an annual return of 5% per annum after inflation. You put in $250,000 over 50 years, and your investment gives you free money of $896,000. So the ratio of free money versus your own money is around 3.4 to 1. That is, for every $1 you put in, you get $3.40 worth of free money on top of your $1. If you only work and invest for 10 years instead of 50 years, you will find that the ratio is around 0.3 to 1. So for every $1 of your own money, the free money that comes to you is only 30 cents. So if we apply the 80-20 rule, the fatal contributor is time. Time contributes 80% of the money you accumulate, and much more if you wait a very long time. So 20% of the effort comes from waiting patiently, keeping up your patience and telling yourself repeatedly that it's okay to wait 50 years. If you want to achieve more results, you can work hard and save hard, but you need to do a lot of work and sacrifice a lot of things just to reach your financial goal a little bit faster. If you work too hard, you start developing health problems, and you cannot have a hobby during your younger years. You may be better off just telling yourself that having $1 million and achieving financial independence after 50 years is more than good enough. At university, I studied a lot. I read all pages of the textbooks. I didn't even remember them, but I read them all because I just felt like ticking the box. I had no purpose, but I just wanted to tick the box and say that I have read it all. It's a bit like a fear of missing out. Maybe if I didn't read one of the pages, I would miss out on certain information. And also, I paid for the textbook already, so I might as well read everything. So I don't miss out and I don't waste my money. But 80% of the exam questions actually come from the lecture notes. I could have saved myself so much time if I only read the lecture notes and didn't even listen to the lectures. I went to all the lectures, and more than half of the time I was daydreaming or chatting with friends. The information in the lectures didn't sink in anyway. So the 80-20 rule is why you see so many different life coaches advocating different methods to become wealthy and become financially independent, or become successful in life, or whatever the case might be. It's because if you just complete 20% of the work, and that should be the vital components, you already get 80% of the outcomes and you are already successful. Some personal finance experts say that you need to have 5 or 10 side hustles to have multiple passive income streams. Other personal finance experts may tell you that you only need to do one thing and do it really well. The truth is that you only need one thing to be reasonably successful. If you look at Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, they run successful businesses. They only run one successful business. You don't see Steve Jobs being famous for another business apart from Apple. Bill Gates does a couple of things, Microsoft and a foundation, but he did the foundation later after he has already succeeded with Microsoft and he has too much money and he doesn't know what to do with the money. So he started to run a charitable foundation. So sometimes a business is a trial and error. You can fast track your journey to have a successful business by commencing 5 or 10 businesses at the same time. But as soon as you find one that works well, you can probably give up the other businesses and focus on that one successful one. Warren Buffett doesn't like to diversify his investments. He believes that those investors who diversify are admitting that they have no idea what they are doing. So the way they earn a good return on their investments is by investing in a bit of everything and hoping for the best, essentially. But with the 80-20 rule, even if you diversify and you do essentially 20% of the work, you don't invest in a silly company that is obviously going to stop growing or get into financial trouble, you've essentially done 20% of your investing work, and this means you will achieve 80% of the potential positive outcomes. Now, Warren Buffett has a lot of investments because he has too much money by this stage. He cannot buy one single company which is big enough to use up all his money, but in the past he preferred to invest in a small number of companies only. Should you diversify? It's up to you. I don't think one approach is necessarily better than the other. You can choose to diversify, it's easier and you are still going to achieve 80% of the success, which is already a high success level, and it's something to be proud of already. Similarly, you can do 5 or 10 side hustles and you are likely to achieve 80% of this success and become really happy. Or you can focus on one particular investment or one particular side hustle, and you will probably still achieve 80% success as well, as long as you don't make a stupid mistake. Now, there are some professions where a lot of people think that the professionals are some sort of cowboys who do not know what they are doing, but those professionals still make a lot of money. This is because as long as they know 20% of the stuff they should know about, they can make 80% of the money. This is the 80-20 rule. If they want to make more than 80%, they need to learn a lot of stuff and put in a lot of effort. But if they're happy enough with making 80% of what they could otherwise make, they don't really need to know what they are doing. They just need to know a little bit of the stuff. In academics, some examinations are done as multiple choice questions. If there are 4 multiple choices and your pass mark is 50%, even if you do not read the question and just choose random A, B, C, D, you already have a 50% chance to get the pass mark of 50%. If there are only 2 multiple choice questions, you have almost 100% chance to get the pass mark of 50%. If you are a mathematician, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I practiced maths. Now, what I said before is if you do not even read the questions, some of those A, B, C, D responses are just plain wrong. So even if you never ever studied, because you have common sense and you have life experiences, you already know that they are definitely incorrect. So maybe even though you have 4 multiple choice responses, 2 of them are obviously wrong. So it's as if your exam question only has 2 multiple choice responses. So you have close to 100% chance of getting the pass mark of 50% by simply reading the questions, applying your common sense and life experiences. So now I want to propose another rule to you, something that's even more relaxed than the 80-20 rule. So this one is called the 50-10 rule. If I do 10% of the work, I am likely to achieve 50% of the desired outcomes. And this means it is very easy to pass in life as long as I have a low target, 50% pass mark. I pick only the low-hanging fruits and do not bother with the difficult ones. So far in life, I think I have been putting in a lot of effort, but now I'm starting to think maybe it's not the correct way to live my life. I would say I have been putting in 90% effort. That is to say I work 90% of the time and do not really do anything else. I only get maybe 81% to 90% of the outcomes I want, depending on what I consider to be my outcomes. If I only consider financial outcomes, I probably achieve 90%, but then I become less healthy, I have no friends, I have no hobbies. So if I include the negative outcomes, the overall outcomes probably becomes 81%. It's kinda ridiculous how I work 90% of the time to achieve a grade of only 81% when I know that I can work only 20% of the time and most likely I'll still achieve a grade of 80%. I think my financial outcomes will drop to around 50% if I only work 20% of the time, but I get other outcomes that I can group together to make myself feel better so that I can consider myself to achieve 80% of the outcomes I want. Like become happier, become more healthy, which means I will have smaller health expenses in the future because you know what, healthcare costs a lot. I can also explore the world, try different things. Now, even though I have this new rule called the 50-10 rule, I still believe that the 80-20 rule is a great principle to follow. I am slowly transitioning to the 50-10 rule because in the past I did 81-90. That is to say I work 90% of the time. So I have essentially achieved financial freedom and I can relax now. But I believe that the 80-20 rule is a great long-term average to aim for. If you start off putting in 20% of your maximum effort, you want to keep putting in 20% for the rest of your life. But if you start off putting in 90%, you probably have achieved 81% of the outcomes you want by now, and you can slowly transition to a life where you put in only 10% of your maximum effort. Unless you are a very exceptional person, it is not sustainable to keep achieving 81% of your outcomes. In economy, there is a law of diminishing returns. Big successful businesses know this and they do not go after 100% market share. They just want to get a small slice of the market and they are content with that. It's silly to go after too big of a market share because it costs more and more to acquire an extra 1% of the market. As a small business owner, I have been looking at my hourly rate recently. This is how much profit I make divided by the number of hours I work during the year, doing productive work and also administrative tasks. I worked out that my hourly rate is around 60 Australian dollars an hour. But there have been many times where I made a few $100s within an hour, and there are a small number of times where I made as high as $1,000 an hour. So if I work only 1 hour or 2 hours a year, my hourly rate is probably going to be something like $1,000 an hour. Well, actually it's not quite sure because there is training to get myself up to speed, and I need economy of scale and momentum. I need a pipeline of customers and a little bit of luck to get that deal, which gives me $1,000 for an hour of work. But the idea is that it is possible for me to achieve a very high hourly rate if I only work a few hours a week. But if I work a lot more, my average hourly rate across all the hours I put in is only $60 an hour. And the final hour I work for that year probably only gives me $20 an hour. That's like minimum wage. So if I was to refuse a customer because I'm not sure whether he will be a great customer or not, giving me a high hourly income, I can probably bump up my average hourly rate to a few $100s an hour. Overall, I will make less money for the year, but my hourly rate will be higher and I work a lot less. And I probably will still make 80% of what I would otherwise have made, or at least 50%. I think 80% of the financial outcomes is not realistic for the type of business I do, but I think I will still make at least 50% of the money. And if I consider the non-financial achievements I will be able to have, I will achieve 80% of both my financial and non-financial goals. Alright, thank you for watching, and I hope you also enjoyed the virtual walking tour video. If you want to see me talking about random things like this, then do subscribe to my channel. And if you are trying to achieve financial freedom, do look at my previous videos where I talk about a lot of tips to save money, to make money, do a bit of both so that you can achieve financial freedom really quickly within 10 or 20 years. But again, you probably do not want to do that because, like I said, the 80-20 rule means that the biggest contributor, the vital factor, is time. You want to actually wait 50 years. You want to give time the opportunity to work for you for the next 50 years. So you don't want to become financially free within 10 years or 20 years. You want to do that over 50 years so that you only need to put in 20% of the effort. Alright, good luck. Thank you.